Chapter 1. This morning wasn't like the others. I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest, like someone had just whispered something into my ear, then silently slipped away into the shadows of my dream. The wall clock was frozen at 6:06. The second hand didn't move. I rubbed my eyes and pulled my phone from the charger. The screen was black. Dead. Outside the window, the sky was a dull gray. Not the usual morning mist, but a heavy ash-colored stillness, like the sky had exhaled a layer of dust upon the world. I sighed. I didn't know why. Maybe because I overslept. Maybe because I felt a little misplaced. The house was silent. Daniel, my husband, must have already left for work. He usually left a note on the kitchen table. "Don't skip breakfast, love. Your stomach will hate you." Today, there was nothing. I stepped into the bathroom, stood in front of the mirror. Something was off. A long crack ran diagonally across the glass, from the upper left corner to the center. I didn't remember it being there yesterday. I stared at myself. Pale face. Sunken eyes like I hadn't slept in days. And for a brief second, I swear I didn't blink. I shook my head and forced a laugh. Maybe I was just shaken from oversleeping. I had to get to work. It was almost 9 a.m. I rolled my scooter out the gate. Pressed the starter. Nothing. Pressed again. Still nothing. I had just changed the battery last week. An elderly neighbor passed by. She glanced at me, quickly looked away, and hurried off. I opened my mouth to say hello, but the moment slipped past. I ran to the bus stop, just in time to see the bus pulling away. A few seconds too late. I stood there, breathing heavily. There was this sinking feeling, as if the day itself didn't want me to go anywhere. Chapter 2. The Office of Ghosts. When I stepped into the lobby on the third floor, the automatic doors slid open with a soft beep. The sensor still recognized me, but the receptionist, Sarah, didn't look up like she always did. She stared blankly at her monitor, face pale, eyes rimmed red like she'd just been crying. I slowed my steps. Something was off in the office. The air felt thick, like time itself had stopped moving. I passed the hallway where coworkers usually gathered for morning banter. No laughter, no greetings, just a tight circle of people huddled around a laptop. One of them sobbed softly. My brows furrowed. What the hell was going on? As I walked into the main workroom, Rebecca, my team lead, looked up and screamed. She staggered back, hand over her mouth, eyes wide in shock. "Oh my God! Emily, is that really you?" We all thought. She couldn't finish her sentence. Just shook her head, trembling. "What was going on?" I asked, my voice dry, shaky. It took a moment for Rebecca to speak again. Your mother called this morning. She said you passed away last night." I froze. My mother? That couldn't be. I hadn't spoken to her in over 10 years. After our final, bitter fight, I had cut all ties, deleted her contact, vanished from her life. No one here even knew she existed. And more importantly, my mother had been dead for 8 years. Chapter 3. The Flowers at the Door. I left the office shortly after. I told them I wasn't feeling well, but the truth was, my mind was spinning. Reality felt like a jigsaw puzzle with the wrong pieces jammed in. On the way home, I tried calling Daniel, but my phone was still off. I had forgotten to charge it. I told myself I'd explain everything to him. He would understand. He always pulled me back when the world spun too fast. When I reached the house, something made me stop cold. A large white flower wreath sat right outside our front door, carefully placed as if someone had just left it there. I bent down to read the card. Our deepest condolences to Daniel. In memory of Emily's sudden passing. Grace Dental and Associates. I stared at the card. The wind shifted. The paper fluttered. My heart turned to ice. I pushed open the door. My hands were trembling. The house felt darker than usual. All the curtains were drawn. Daniel was lying on the couch, a cold towel across his forehead. When he saw me, he jolted upright, like he'd just seen a ghost. "Emily? Oh God! Emily!" He rushed toward me, wrapping his arms around me tightly, like he was afraid I'd disappear. I felt his tears on my skin, but I also felt something else, something missing. His embrace was cold, lighter than it should be. We sat down. I told him everything. The phone call at the office, the flowers. Daniel stared at me as wild. This morning, someone called me too. Unknown number. It was your mother's voice. She said you died in your sleep last night. I shook my head. That's impossible. She's been gone for years. You know that. Daniel didn't answer. He turned away. I wanted to scream, but the fear rising in my chest wasn't from anger. It was something colder, damp, like a breath from somewhere I didn't belong. Chapter 4. Cracks in Reality. I couldn't sleep that night. Daniel had taken some sleeping pills and drifted off quickly. I stayed in the living room, the soft yellow lamplight casting long shadows across the wooden floor. I opened my laptop and typed my mother's name into the search bar. Only one result came up, a death notice from 8 years ago. Stroke, confirmed by City Hospital. Full name, birth date, photograph, everything matched. No doubt, but if she was truly gone, then who had called Daniel? Who called my office? I tried checking the incoming number at work again. Private number. No caller ID. No trace. I wandered into the bedroom. Daniel still lay asleep, his breathing even and deep. I watched him for a long moment, and then quietly walked away. There was something distant about him now. Too still. Too quiet. I stood before the mirror again. The crack had split further, now forming 2 jagged branches like something behind it was pushing to break free. I reached out and touched the glass. Cold. But my reflection didn't respond right away. There was a pause, half a second too long before it moved. The lights in the room weren't flickering, but the glow felt off, like they were shining on someone who wasn't me. I stepped into the living room. The landline, one we hadn't used in years, rang. I froze. Nobody had that number. It had been disconnected for a long time. I walked over, picked it up. From the other end, a faint, steady breathing. Cold and slow. Hello? I asked, voice trembling. No answer. Just the breathing. I was about to hang up when a voice whispered through the static, as if echoing from underground. Still not ready. Emily. The receiver slipped from my hand. I staggered back. That voice. There was no mistaking it. It was my mother. Chapter 5. Fractured Memories. I didn't sleep at all. It wasn't fear. It was emptiness, like something had hollowed out my chest and left a quiet echo inside. I plugged in my phone and turned it back on. No new messages, except for one missed call, from my own number. I stared, then hesitantly tapped to play the voicemail. No words. Just silence. Then a whisper, barely audible. Come back! I went up to the attic. It used to be where I kept my old journals, photo albums, little things Daniel never bothered with. I opened the wooden chest and found a worn brown leather notebook. I flipped through the pages. One entry dated a few weeks ago caught my eye. Lately I've been feeling tired. My chest feels heavy at night, like something's pressing down. Daniel says I should see a doctor, but I keep putting it off. Another page. I saw Mom in my dream last night. She stood at the foot of the bed, didn't blink. I asked her what she wanted. She just shook her head and vanished. I didn't remember writing those words. Didn't remember the sleepless nights. Didn't remember the dreams. Or maybe part of me had always known. A soft sound echoed from upstairs. Just a creak, barely there. Only two of us lived here. And Daniel was still asleep. Wasn't he? I climbed the stairs. The sound had come from the office. I opened the door. The room was empty. I turned to leave, then froze. A dusty, old landline sat on the desk. The same phone I had thrown out years ago. It couldn't be here. I stepped closer. Its dim LCD screen glowed faintly. "Missed call, Mom." I wanted to scream, but my throat locked shut. I went back downstairs. Daniel was awake, sitting by the window. He looked dazed, like someone who had just woken up from a dream too heavy to carry. I sat next to him. He turned to me and asked softly, "Did you call me last night?" I shook my head. "I dreamed. I found you on the bathroom floor. Cold. You weren't breathing." I wrapped my arms around him. This time, he didn't react. He didn't feel me. Chapter 6. No One Sees Me. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of having just stepped out of another world. A foggy place with no shape, only whispers. Daniel wasn't in the room. I went downstairs to the kitchen. He was making coffee, but he didn't look at me. I stepped closer, touched his shoulder. Nothing. "Daniel!" I called softly. He lifted the pot, poured himself a cup, then turned away, completely unaware of my presence. I stood there, frozen. This time, the feeling was clear, undeniable. He couldn't see me. I walked out into the street, hoping someone, anyone, might smile at me, wave, say good morning. No one did. People passed by me like I wasn't there. No eye contact. No glances. Not even a hint of acknowledgement. I tried shouting in the middle of the sidewalk. Nothing. I ran into the corner convenience store. Mrs. Patel, the owner, was restocking the shelves. I called her name. She didn't blink. I wasn't here. Not anymore. I returned home, heart pounding, hands shaking. Daniel sat at the dining table, phone pressed to his ear. Yes, I understand. Thank you for calling. I'll begin making arrangements." My legs went weak. He hung up, hands trembling. Then he lowered his head and sobbed. I stood in the same room, under the same roof, breathing the same air. But I was already gone. I ran upstairs to the bathroom. I needed to see myself, needed to know I still existed. But when I looked in the mirror, nothing. Just an empty space. No reflection. No shadow. No me. Chapter 7. Forgotten Truths. I hid in the attic, the only place left that still felt mine. This was where I kept old journals, childhood photos, small pieces of a life I once called normal. I pulled out a wooden box, opened the lid. Inside, a weathered leather notebook, dusty but familiar. I opened it. One page, written in my own handwriting weeks ago. Lately I've been feeling short of breath, heavy in the chest, like something pressing down. Daniel keeps telling me to see a doctor. I keep saying I will. Another entry. Last night I saw Mom again. She was standing at the foot of the bed, just watching. I asked her what she wanted. She didn't answer, just shook her head, then vanished. I didn't remember writing those. Didn't remember the fatigue, the dreams, the warnings. Or maybe I had always known. I powered on my computer. I couldn't stop myself. Typed into the search bar, Emily Harper death accident. The first result, woman found dead in bathroom from suspected stroke. Discovered by husband the next morning. I couldn't read further. Name, age, address. It was all me. I had died, and I was the only one who didn't know. Chapter 8. The line between two worlds. I wandered the house like a shadow. No one called my name. No one looked for me. Not even Daniel. Outside, the rain had stopped. The house smelled faintly of old wood and fading white lilies. I stood by the window, watching the glass reflect a blurred version of myself. Faint, flickering, as if I were slowly fading from this world. Midnight. The doorbell rang. Daniel didn't hear it. Only I did. I was the one who got up, walked to the front door, and opened it. A woman in a black cloak stood there, holding a black umbrella. Her face was veiled in a thin scarf, but I recognized her instantly. My mother. You remember now, don't you? She asked. Her voice came from far away, soft and distant, like wind traveling through layers of air between two worlds. I nodded. My lips trembled, unable to speak. It's time, Emily, she said. You don't belong here anymore. I turned back toward the house. Daniel lay asleep on the couch, clutching a photo of me to his chest. The life we shared, the love, the unfinished conversations, all still there. I whispered, if I go, will he remember me? My mother said nothing at first. Then gently, he always will. But sorrow needs sleep too, my dear. I took her hand. It was cold, but real. She led me down the steps and out into a street bathed in silvery light. I looked back one last time, at the house, at the warmth, at everything I used to be. And then, I crossed the line. No sound, no radiant light, just stillness, and a whisper deep in my heart. Sometimes, it's not death we fear, but the act of letting go. Chapter 9. The Last Goodbye. I don't know how far I walked. The road stretched endlessly, bathed in dim silver light, like moonlight through fog. My mother walked beside me in silence. No wind, no rustling trees. Even time felt suspended. We stopped at an open field. No signs, no borders, just stillness. She turned to me one last time and gave me a small nod. From here on, you must go alone. She faded into the mist, like she was never there to begin with. I stood alone for what felt like hours. Then a sound, soft, like wind brushing a wind chime. A voice called out from behind me, familiar and aching. Emily! I turned. Daniel stood there. Not real, I knew. A memory, a flicker of love, clinging to the world I left behind. But still he was there. His eyes were the same as the first day we met. I'm sorry, he whispered. I couldn't hold on to you, even though my heart still tries. I walked toward him, raised my hand to touch his face. This time I felt warmth. Just a moment, like the last heartbeat of a memory before it lets go. I'm sorry too, I said. I never got to say goodbye. Daniel gave a trembling smile. You did. Every day we had together was a goodbye wrapped in love. He disappeared into the light. Not painful, not tragic, just gone. I looked up. The sky above me opened like a quiet door. No angels, no music, only one feeling. I was being welcomed. And at last, I stepped through. Chapter 10. The morning after. Daniel woke up before the sun. The rain had stopped. The house was quiet, filled with the faint scent of damp wood and the last traces of white lilies. He stepped out of bed, walked the hallway. Everything looked familiar, but something felt missing, as if something had just left, an absence without shape or name, but deeply, unmistakably present. In the living room, he found Emily's photo on the table. The first rays of morning light spilled across the glass, forming a soft halo around her face. Daniel touched the frame. Cold, but not harsh, as if the woman inside was smiling at him. The funeral had been simple. Just a few friends, some coworkers. Sarah mentioned the strange phone call. Rebecca still looked shaken. But they all agreed on one thing. Emily had passed in her sleep, peacefully, as though the world had simply exhaled and taken her with it, without pain. No one talked about the strange things that had happened. No one dared. That night, Daniel lay in bed alone. He listened to the wind slip through the window cracks. He still hadn't grown used to her absence, but he didn't cry anymore. Instead, he reached for her old notebook and flipped through its pages. Near the back, a final message appeared, hurriedly scribbled. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Please don't be too sad. Daniel, I just left a little earlier than you. Keep living, and when the time comes, I'll be waiting, just like I always did. A breeze swept through the room. The curtains swayed gently. A single white feather drifted down to the floor. Daniel looked up. He didn't know why, but he smiled, and far away, where night meets the light, someone was waiting.